If you can't understand the Mission Impossible series, then you should definitely follow me. I will provide detailed explanations of every detail in each movie of the series, ensuring that by the end, you will know what it means to be a top-level agent. Not only must be adept at disguise, but also at reasoning and thinking, and you even need to be able to go to great lengths to accomplish your mission. Ethan disguises himself and sneaks into a party with his partner Sarah, who had already infiltrated to assist him. Then another partner, Hannah, identifies the target, and Sarah sprays a special perfume on the target. With special glasses, Hannah can continuously track the target. Meanwhile, Jack has infiltrated the elevator and is hacking its password system. Sarah and Ethan believe Jack has cracked the elevator code and pressed the fingerprint scanner. At this moment, a security guard notices that Hannah's fingerprint doesn't match, so he comes to investigate. Jack temporarily inputs Hannah's forged information into the security system, making her fingerprint match successfully. They went downstairs to the archive room and adjusted the position of the glasses on the table, which was a camera. Their goal this time is to capture evidence of a traitor stealing a list of undercover agents and then arrest him. Hannah alerts them that the target has reached the elevator. Target pressed the lift. After Jack opens the door for Ethan, they hide under the elevator to avoid detection. The plan proceeds successfully as the camera captures evidence of the traitor's crime. He plans to leave and sell the list to terrorists at a high price. Ethan and Sarah quickly head out to their surveillance positions, pretending to be a couple, but at that moment, Jack encounters an accident as the elevator uncontrollably speeds up, leading to his sacrifice. Jim, at home, hears this news and immediately cancels the operation.
Stay where you are. I'm coming to you.
Ethan is reluctant to give up because if the list is leaked, all their undercover colleagues in Eastern Europe will be sacrificed. Just then, Jim reports he is being followed. Ethan quickly tells Sarah to continue tracking the target while he goes to assist Jim. When Ethan reaches under the bridge, he finds Jim shot and falling into the river. He immediately called to Sarah to stop the action, but Sarah didn't answer him, and he knew Sarah must have been killed too. He rushes desperately to see if he can come to the rescue in time. It is at this point that Claire, who had been scheduled to pick up Hannah, has her entire car explode after picking up Hannah, and 2 more of her colleagues are killed. Ethan thinks to himself, what's going on tonight? And by the time he gets to Sarah, it's too late. Both Sarah and the target have been stabbed to death with a pocket knife, and the list is nowhere to be found. Earlier, Sarah had been cautiously following the target when she saw someone pull the target towards the iron gate. She went to check, but was ambushed and killed by the assailant. As the police arrived, Ethan quickly calmed down, knowing that if he was caught, he would be unable to clear his name. Using an encrypted chip, he dialed headquarters via satellite phone, reporting that his team was wiped out and the mission had failed. The person on the other end was shocked by the casualties and told Ethan to meet at a restaurant immediately. Ethan found it strange that the boss was not at the US headquarters but on the front line with them. With suspicion, he met with the boss, Kittredge. Kittredge handed Ethan a passport and visa, instructing him to return to headquarters in Langley.
I think we've lost enough agents for one night.
You mean I've lost enough agents for one night?
You seem hell-bent on blaming yourself, Ethan.
Yeah, who else is left?
Yeah, that's your point.
Why was there another team of IMF agents at the embassy tonight?
I don't quite follow you.
Ethan grew wary and, upon reflecting on the night's events, realized that besides their team, another team of agents was present at the scene. Despite Kittredge's denials, Ethan was convinced. He also noticed that everyone in the restaurant was an agent. Kittredge then slowly revealed the truth. For the past 2 years, their CIA missions had been failing, leading him to believe there was a mole within. A few days ago, they had cracked information about an arms dealer named Max online, so he ordered Ethan and his team to carry out tonight's operation, but no one knew the operation was a bait. With the target being one of their own, the lost list was fake, intended to lure the mole out, but now everyone was dead except Ethan, and $120,000 had appeared in Ethan's parents' bank account. Everyone believed Ethan was the mole, but Ethan knew he was being framed. To save himself, he pulled out a special gum bomb and threw it into a fish tank. The massive explosion caused chaos, allowing Ethan to escape back to their team's base. Ethan was very cautious, scattering broken light bulbs on the floor to make noise if someone approached. He looked for money and a passport to escape but found nothing. He then thought of the clues Kittredge mentioned. These clues linked the mole to Max. He searched the database with keywords but found nothing. Suddenly, he noticed a Bible on the bookshelf in front of him and remembered Job as a part of the Bible. So find chapter 3, verse 14 of the Bible book of Job and then search your computer for Bible keywords. He discovered 126 groups, then found Job's group and input the verse, revealing emails. Ethan immediately sent an email to Max, warning him as an undercover agent that the product was contaminated and dangerous to use, indicating the list was fake. He also sent a Bible verse and a Russian version of the email. Late at night, Ethan dreamt of Jim coming back for help but woke up to find Claire. Claire was Jim's wife, responsible for the final extraction in the operation. Ethan clearly saw the car explode and Hannah was dead. So why is Claire still alive? He suspected Claire might be the mole, but Claire showed a heartbroken and devastated demeanor. Ethan, somewhat infatuated with Claire, trusted her under her pitiful appearance. They received a reply from Max, asking Ethan to buy a pack of cigarettes at 1 p.m. and borrow a lighter from a long-haired man at a street corner. Ethan complied, getting into a car and being hooded, eventually meeting Max. Ethan immediately asked for $150,000. Max realized he was not their mole, Job, but Ethan remained calm, revealing his identity and saying he was framed by Job. He warned that the list Job provided was fake and would signal the CIA upon opening, leading to immediate capture. Max was skeptical but opened the list while observing. There are indeed more uninvited guests on the street, and the CIA men enter the hotel in disguise. But by the time they were ready to enter the room, Max had already evacuated. Max is grateful for Ethan's help and offers Ethan $6 million to get a list of all the agents the CIA has placed in Eastern Europe, but Ethan demanded $10 million. He also insisted that Job be present at the transaction site so he could capture him and clear his name. Max agreed. Ethan called Claire to find two helpers, Luther, a top hacker who once infiltrated NATO's ghost site, and Krieger, a top assassin skilled at flying planes. For a hefty fee, they agreed to help Ethan infiltrate CIA headquarters. How do they break into CIA headquarters? First, there's voice recognition and a 6-digit password. If they crack this, they reach the outer room with 24-hour surveillance. Next, they face iris scans and an anti-intrusion device, requiring double-layer electronic key cards. If they pass this, they reach the database, the most dangerous area with 3 security systems, each life-threatening. First is sound detection, triggering an alarm if noise exceeds a certain level. Second is temperature detection, triggering an alarm if body heat raises room temperature. Third is gravity detection, triggering an alarm if anything falls on the floor. Breaking into CIA headquarters and obtaining the list of Eastern European agents seems impossible. Even insiders without authorization face certain death. But Ethan, once a CIA member, now falsely framed as a traitor, must get this list to clear his name. Ethan, Krieger, and Claire disguise as firefighters to enter the office hall. Luther hacks the building's security system, triggering a fire alarm. Claire leaves, disguising as an intellectual white-collar worker, targeting the database supervisor. She slips a mysterious drug into his drink and plants a tiny tracker on him. Meanwhile, Ethan and Krieger, changing clothes, are spotted by security. They knock him out and crawl into the ventilation ducts, reaching above the database, using special tools to disable the laser grid and remove screws, allowing entry to avoid making any noise, generating excess heat, or touching the floor. Ethan is lowered on a wire, with Krieger holding him from above. Just as Ethan reaches the bottom, the supervisor comes in for a routine check. Everyone holds their breath, waiting for Claire's drug to take effect. Finally, the supervisor starts vomiting inexplicably and heads to the restroom with a trash can. Ethan's chance comes, and with Luther's hacking, he accesses the list database and downloads it. During the data transfer, a rat appears in the duct. Just a millimeter short, Ethan dropped to the floor. However, the situation remains critical as Krieger, having killed the rat, struggles to hold the wire. Reaching his limit, Ethan's rising tension causes his body heat to increase, and sweat begins to drip from his face. At this point, the supervisor returns, and Krieger uses his last ounce of strength to pull Ethan up just in time.
One red. Toast, get moving. toast.
However, Krieger accidentally drops a knife onto the desk. The supervisor notices the knife and, upon closer inspection, sees evidence of a data download. Ethan quickly throws a smoke bomb and, disguised as a firefighter, escapes in the ensuing chaos. An enraged Kittredge orders the supervisor to be transferred to a remote location. Ethan then contacts Max in London. Krieger, holding the list, intends to keep the $10 million reward for himself, but Ethan tells him that the list is blank, explaining that he had swapped it when he first got it. Giving Krieger the blank version, Krieger stormed off angrily, but Ethan picked up the list Krieger had thrown away. Realizing it was the genuine one, Ethan handed the real list to Luther, instructing him to ensure that during the trade tomorrow, the list must not be fully copied by the other party, as it concerned the lives of thousands of Eastern European agents. Luther agreed. At that moment, Claire called Ethan over to watch the news, revealing that Ethan's parents had been falsely accused and arrested as drug dealers. His parents were honest farmers, but this was Kittredge's scheme to lure Ethan into a trap. Ethan went to a public phone booth and deliberately exposed his location to Kittredge. Just as Kittredge was about to trace Ethan's exact location in London, Ethan hung up the phone. The biggest twist of the story unfolded here. Ethan's superior, Jim, was not dead but had miraculously survived. Jim found Ethan and claimed he had been shot by Kittredge, asserting that Kittredge was the real mole. However, Ethan suspected that Jim had manipulated the elevator to kill Jack and had shot himself to fake his death, and the target and Sarah were killed by Krieger. During their time at the CIA, Ethan had stopped Krieger from killing a security guard and noticed that Krieger's knife was the same one used to kill Sarah and the target. Ethan deduced that Krieger and Jim were working together. Who killed Hannah then? Was it Claire? It was possible since she was actually Jim's wife, and they were in cahoots. Ethan preferred to believe that Jim himself had triggered the car explosion. At this point, Ethan still wanted to believe Claire was innocent, showing his deep feelings for her. Ethan suspected Jim was the mole when Krieger knocked a Bible off the table during their argument. When Ethan picked it up, he noticed it was from the Drake Hotel, where Jim had mentioned he stayed.
One of your cushy recruiting assignments again?
Now, where'd they put you up this time? The Plaza?
Drake Hotel, Chicago.
The book contained the code Job used to communicate with Max. Ethan inferred that Jim was Job. Without alerting Jim, Ethan continued to observe his performance. Jim calls Kittredge a mole and says that Kittredge must be doing this because he's not happy with the current US government, having worked diligently as a secret agent himself for decades to the point where he's only making $60,000 plus a year and his marriage is failing. That's why he was corrupted by money and bought by the enemy. Jim wanted Ethan to take Kittredge down, and Ethan pretended to agree. Before the trade the next day, Kittredge received an anonymous letter containing a ticket to London and Ethan's watch. It was clear Ethan sent it, indicating that he chose a train for his trade with Max. Following Ethan's guidance, Max acquired the list and informed Ethan about the location of the $10 million. Ethan had Luther use a jamming device to disrupt Max's copying of the list. Seeing Kittredge, Luther panicked and tried to leave the device on the table, but a waiter reminded him he had forgotten something. Luther had to hide in the bathroom with the device. Without the jamming device, Max began copying the list. Ethan sent Claire to retrieve the money. Kittredge recognized Claire and chased her, but Max's men intervened. Claire then met up with Jim and urged him not to kill Ethan, suggesting they could escape with the money. Regardless of what Ethan said, no one would believe Jim was alive, and he would continue to be blamed as the mole. But this Jim was actually Ethan in disguise. Testing whether Claire was really Jim's accomplice, the real Jim appeared, intending to kill Ethan. Ethan put on glasses equipped with a camera, transmitting Jim's image to Ethan's watch. Now in Kittredge's possession, realizing Jim was alive, Kittredge understood he had wronged Ethan, and Jim was the mole. The truth finally came out. Jim tried to kill Ethan, but Claire pleaded for Ethan's life. Enraged by his wife's betrayal, Jim killed Claire but let Ethan escape. Ethan pursued Jim onto the train roof, with Krieger piloting a helicopter to support Jim. Ethan managed to attach the helicopter's hook to the train, forcing Krieger to follow it into a tunnel. Jim knocked Ethan off the train, but Ethan held on. Jim immediately untied the helicopter and Krieger picked up Jim. Ethan attempted to intercept but failed. Krieger, intent on killing Ethan, repeatedly rammed the helicopter into him. In a critical moment, Ethan jumped onto the helicopter and threw a gum bomb. killing Krieger and Jim, Ethan is lucky not to die, as the train goes into a tunnel and loses signal in the car, and Max doesn't succeed in copying the list and is captured by Kittredge. At the end of the film, Ethan leaves on a plane, binge-watching the entire Mission Impossible series. This is the second movie. Ethan has transformed from a fresh-faced youth into a mature, sexy man. Let's get back to the point. What challenges will Ethan face in this installment? The movie begins with Dr. Vladimir Nekhorovich, a biologist in Sydney, who has developed a virus named Chimera. For some reason, Nekhorovich deeply regrets creating this monster, so he contacts the CIA, asking Ethan to escort the virus and vaccine to the United States to turn them over. On the plane, Ethan kills Nekhorovich, steals the virus and vaccine, and hijacks the plane. In the next moment, Ethan removes his mask, revealing that he is actually the terrorist Sean. The real Ethan, meanwhile, is rock climbing somewhere in the world on vacation, completely unaware that someone is impersonating him and committing crimes. The CIA then assigns him a mission to retrieve what Sean has stolen. At this point, the CIA doesn't even know that the stolen item is a virus. Ethan is told to select 2 colleagues for the mission, but the third must be a skilled professional thief named Nyah. After recruiting his team, Ethan heads to Seville to meet with his leader. At a party, Ethan spots Nyah. Nyah sneaks into a room, searching for a necklace worth $5 million. After opening a secret compartment with great effort, she finds the necklace isn't there. At this moment, Ethan appears behind her, startling Nyah. Just then, the room's owner enters, and the two hide in the bathtub in an intimate position. After the owner leaves, Ethan tells Nyah the location of the necklace. Following Ethan's instructions, Nyah retrieves the necklace. As she tries to return the box, the alarm is triggered, and security personnel rush in. Nyah doesn't have time to escape, but Ethan steps in to vouch for her, claiming she was testing the security system. It turns out Ethan is the head of security there, and he pretends to ask Nyah for her suggestions. In the end, Nyah was made to hand over the necklace again, and just like that, the $5 million she had just got was returned. Nyah is furious with Ethan for not arresting her but also not letting her steal the necklace. Ethan explains that he wanted to see her skills in action since his superiors insisted on recruiting her. Nyah shows no interest, but Ethan's persistence intrigues her, and she proposes a race. On the highway, they speed recklessly, their flirtatious glances making it seem more like a romance than a race. The race ends in a car crash. And at that moment, they fall in love. That night, they spend time together as a couple, having successfully recruited Nyah. Ethan reports back to his leader. The leader, played by the actor from Hannibal, shows Ethan a video of Nekhorovich appealing for help from the CIA. The leader shows Ethan the video of Nekhorovich asking for help from the CIA, in which Nekhorovich says that in order to find the hero, Bellerophon, he must find the villain, Chimera, and then asks Ethan to escort him back to the United States. Since Ethan was on vacation at the time, the leader had Sean impersonate Ethan to pick up Nekhorovich. However, Sean betrayed them and stole Nekhorovich's items. They still don't know what the stolen item is.
What was this Chimera Nekhorovich was carrying?
Only Ambrose knows that.
Now, in case you must recover this, whatever Chimera, and bring it to us.
In order to do that, I have to figure out how he plans to make money with it.
That is where Miss Hall comes in.
The leader reveals a plan that Ethan finds hard to accept. Nyah wasn't recruited for her skills, but because she is Sean's ex-girlfriend. Nyah left Sean 6 months ago, but Sean is still obsessed with her. The leader wants Nyah to return to Sean and spy on him, offering to erase all her criminal records in exchange. Ethan objects, arguing that Nyah isn't professionally trained and would likely be caught. He also doesn't want her to take the risk because he has fallen in love with her. The leader says nothing, only giving Ethan a camera with photos from the plane incident, showing hundreds of dead passengers. Ethan shows the photos to Nyah, letting her decide for herself. Nyah initially refuses, saying she lacks the sense of justice and doesn't want to be morally blackmailed. But seeing Ethan's internal conflict, Nyah agrees to go through with it, purely for Ethan, because she loves him. Ethan then issues a global police alert for Nyah, leading to her arrest. Sean, who has been closely monitoring law enforcement since the plane incident, uses his connections to rescue Nyah. Nyah begins her undercover mission with Sean. Sean's subordinate Hugh warns him to be cautious of Nyah, but Sean's obsession blinds him to any suspicions. Sean knows Nyah's return is too coincidental and suspects she might be working for the CIA, but he chooses to trust her. He even cuts off Hugh's finger, warning him not to interfere with his personal matters. Showcasing Sean's violent and arrogant nature, at the racetrack, Sean leaves to conduct a deal with a buyer. Ethan sends Billy to give Nyah an earpiece. Meanwhile, Luther monitors Sean's transaction, where Sean inserts a memory card into a camera to show the buyer. Ethan immediately recognizes the buyer as the CEO of a biotech company, Horvich's superior. Why would he pay for his own company's product? When Sean returned to the stable, Nyah took the memory card and then, under the pretext of going to place a bet, came over to Ethan and handed him the memory card. Ethan quickly makes a backup. Luther watches the video, revealing the virus's effects on the human body. Combining this with Horvich's earlier video about the hero and villain, they realize Sean has stolen the virus and vaccine. Sean plans to sell the virus for profit. Nyah's mission is complete, and Ethan tells her to leave Sean.
If you don't get out of there, I'm coming in and getting you out.
Nathan, get out of there!
At the last moment, Hugh arrives, but Ethan has already returned to Sean. Nyah returns the memory card but is still detected by Sean. That night, Ethan kidnaps the biotech CEO, who wakes up to find Horvich alive. Horvich tricks the CEO into thinking he's infected with the Chimera virus, extracting a confession that he plans to release the virus and make money from the vaccine. Horvich, furious at the CEO for experimenting on his assistant, learns the virus needs to be injected within 20 hours to be lethal. After obtaining the information, Horvich removes his mask, revealing himself to be Ethan, since Horvich injected the virus into himself when he took it. The box only contained the vaccine, leaving Sean with just the vaccine and no virus. As soon as they go to the drug company and destroy the virus samples, the vaccine Sean is holding is a waste. The virus is hidden on the 42nd floor of this building. With heavy guards on every level, Ethan can only enter through the rooftop solar power vent, but the fan blades close at night. If the blades are open for more than 40 seconds at night, an alarm will be triggered, giving Ethan only 40 seconds.
Open up.
5.
Ethan successfully enters the building and must retract the cable in the last few seconds, or the blades won't close. As expected, the cable retracts at the last second.
Acting cable!
5, 4, 7.
Completing the first half of the mission, but Sean is in control of everything. Sean accurately deduced when, where, and how Ethan would act. When he learned that the president had been kidnapped and then released, he knew Ethan was going to destroy the virus. Those 8 minutes were the best time for Sean to kill Ethan. At this moment, Ethan has just destroyed the virus sample in the petri dish, but there are still 3 viral guns in another inoculation room. Ethan arrives at the inoculation room and destroys 2 of the guns. As he is about to destroy the third, Sean arrives with his man. Luther tries to warn him, but the signal is cut off. He watches helplessly as Sean approaches Ethan. In the last second, the virus falls amidst Sean's gunfire. Sean immediately stops firing and threatens Nyah to retrieve the virus. To save Ethan, Nyah injects the virus into herself, risking her own life. Ethan takes this opportunity to blast through the walls of the building. But since there's only one set of landing gear, all he can do is promise Nyah that he'll get her vaccinated within 20 hours and slip away. The next day, Sean takes the vaccine and Nyah's blood to negotiate with the president, originally promised $31 million. Sean reneges and demands 51% of the president's company shares, knowing that the pharmaceutical company's stock will skyrocket if the virus spreads, far exceeding $31 million. During the standoff, explosions are heard outside. They know Ethan has arrived. Sean sends Hugh to deal with Ethan. Soon, Hugh's voice comes through, saying he has captured Ethan and brings him before Sean. Sean shoots Ethan directly, but seeing the wounded little finger, he realizes this is not Ethan, But Hugh, the real Ethan, has already made off with the virus and the vaccine. After a long chase, the final showdown between Ethan and Sean takes place. Although both are top CIA-trained agents, Ethan is far superior in skill. Sean is quickly defeated. Meanwhile, Nyah, who is about to jump into the sea, is rescued in time by Luther and brought to Ethan. Seeing Luther's expression, Ethan immediately senses something is wrong. In the end, Ethan completes the mission and goes on vacation. Nyah's criminal record is erased by the CIA, and she reunites with Ethan. Mission Impossible 3 is here. Ethan is in the middle of his engagement to Julia when the leader sends a spy mission to Ethan to rescue his female protégé Lindsay in Berlin. Lindsay had been investigating international black market smuggler Owen, but her cover was blown and she was captured. Ethan was going to say no because he already has plans for the future and he's about to marry his current girlfriend, Julia, who doesn't know about his spy status. However, Ethan's memories of Lindsay compel him to accept the mission, and he heads to Berlin without telling Julia. Accompanying him are Luther from the previous films and 2 new team members. They infiltrate the building and find Lindsay barely alive. Ethan injects her with adrenaline. During their escape, Lindsay reveals she has a secret only for Ethan, but they are interrupted by an enemy attack, forcing them to retreat. Jen detonates the building as they flee. On the plane, Lindsay experiences severe pain. There's a microbomb in her head that detonates, killing her. Heartbroken, Ethan hides his sorrow from Julia, pretending everything is fine. Back at the IMF, Ethan and Musgrave, who planned the mission, are reprimanded by Director Theodore. At Lindsay's funeral, Ethan gets a call from the post office saying that Lindsay's letter to him from Berlin has arrived. When Ethan picks up the letter, there's a nondescript particle on it, which he hands to Luther for inspection. Luther, on the other hand, says it's a blank particle with no information whatsoever. The intelligence department of the other agency restored the disk and learned that Owen would make a deal with the buyer in Vatican City in 2 days. Ethan came up with the idea of capturing Owen, so the team acted on their own without reporting to their superiors. However, capturing someone in the Vatican is no easy task. The Vatican, although only 0.44 square kilometers in area, is surrounded by extremely high walls and hundreds of surveillance cameras. Ethan disguised himself as a driver and staged a traffic dispute with Declan, blocking the road, and then climbed over the wall amidst the chaos. Luther blocked the surveillance beforehand. Then Ethan pasted a photo in front of the camera in lieu of a real-time scenario, fooled the surveillance crew, and entered the Vatican without incident. Immediately changing into his priestly attire and walking in naturally, he went to the equipment center to help Declan replace the surveillance footage. Declan also took the opportunity to enter the Vatican. Declan changes into overalls and comes out to meet Jen, says he forgot to type Jen's name on the invitation, and blends in at the Vatican. Finally, Luther entered through the sewer and met up with Ethan under his guidance. At the auction, Jen identified their target Owen and took photos from various angles, which Luther used to start 3D printing a mask. By this time, Owen had quietly completed the transaction with the buyer and was preparing to leave. Jen deliberately spilled red wine, forcing Owen to go to the bathroom to clean up, where Ethan, wearing the Owen mask, ambushed and knocked him out, was about to carry Owen with Declan when Owen's bodyguard came in. At that moment, Owen's voice had 30 seconds left before it could be decrypted, raising the bodyguard's suspicion.
Here's my ID. Okay, go.
Fine, wait outside.
Fortunately, Luther successfully decrypted Owen's voice just in time. Ethan then took the transaction briefcase and left with Jen. They drove the car to a pre-marked manhole cover, where Luther was waiting for them. They quietly went down into the sewer and blew up the car, making everyone believe Owen was dead. Owen was captured, and upon learning of this, Theodore praised Ethan's superior Musgrave.
You were aware of this operation?
Yes, I was.
Then good work.
On the plane back home, Ethan interrogated Owen about the transaction, but Owen remained arrogant and even threatened Ethan's wife, Julia. This infuriated Ethan. After disembarking, they were taken by special car, but while crossing a sea bridge, terrorists attacked and rescued Owen. Just moments ago, Luther finally cracked the particles Lindsay sent. It was a video in which Lindsay told Ethan that she had been sent to monitor Owen, and discovered that Theodore was connected to Owen, but her cover was blown, and she was killed. Ethan and Lindsay had both been betrayed by their superior. Now even Julia has been captured by Owen and is nowhere to be found. Owen called Ethan using Julia's phone, demanding he retrieve the rabbit's foot if he wanted Julia to live. The clue to the rabbit's foot was inside the transaction briefcase. The next second, Ethan was arrested by his colleagues. Suspected of defecting after Owen escaped. After being taken to the intelligence agency, Theodore declared in front of Ethan that all potential threats must be eliminated for national security. When Theodore leaves, Musgrave tells Ethan an address in code, then quietly gives him a pocket knife. Ethan used the knife to free himself, subdued the guards, and went to the address Musgrave mentioned, which was an apartment in Shanghai. The team regrouped, determined to help him rescue Julia. They cracked the contents of the briefcase and learned that the rabbit's foot was in a building in Shanghai. However, the place was heavily guarded, especially the rooftop, making entry nearly impossible. Ethan decided to move from the adjacent building and take out the rooftop guards. Initially planning to parachute from the rooftop, Ethan ended up jumping directly while being pursued. He frantically chased the rabbit's foot on the street, with Declan providing timely support. After a series of gunfights and chases, they eliminated the pursuers. Ethan then contacted Musgrave, informing him that he placed a tracker on the rabbit's foot and instructed him to send troops to capture Owen if Ethan was out of contact for more than 8 hours. Theodore became suspicious and questioned Musgrave about sending people to Shanghai. Musgrave made up an excuse, saying they received intelligence about a target appearing in Shanghai. Meanwhile, Ethan, with the rabbit's foot, contacted Owen. Owen's men drugged and knocked Ethan out. Ethan knows it's poison, but with Julia on the other side and no sign of Owen yet, he has no choice but to do as he's told. When Ethan woke up, he was tied up, with Julia bound across from him. Owen asked where the rabbit's foot was. Ethan was confused, thinking he had already given it to Owen. Ignoring Ethan, Owen began counting, threatening to kill Julia if Ethan didn't reveal the rabbit's foot's location.
Where is it?
Look at me.
Where the hell is it?
Look at me. Stay with me.
Seven!
I am gonna kill you.
I swear to God, I'm gonna... 8!
Please. Don't. I promise you. Do this. Just let it go. I can figure out how to get whatever.
9!
Please. I want to help you get whatever you want. What you know is right. Please. No.
10.
Owen intended to make Ethan suffer, seeking revenge for the torture he endured on the plane. Owen's plan succeeded as Ethan watched Julia die in front of him. At that moment, Musgrave appeared, It turned out the real traitor was Musgrave, not Theodore. Everything had been Musgrave's trap. He had been secretly dealing with Owen all along. Musgrave needed people like Owen to sell dangerous weapons to weaker nations, providing the US a pretext to invade and colonize those countries. He had deliberately fed Theodore's information to Lindsay, needing to topple Theodore to take his place and act without restraint. Ethan's Julia wasn't actually dead. The woman who died was a stranger. He used as a ploy to make Ethan talk and confirm that the rabbit's foot they had was genuine. Just now Ethan was pushed to his limits, so he believes stuff is real. Just as Musgrave is giving Ethan a listen to his Julia's voice, Ethan swoops in on Musgrave to free himself, and then contacts someone from the US intelligence agency's tech post to help him locate the address of the phone this phone was just talking to. Following their guidance, Ethan ran continuously. He finally found Julia, knocked out the guards but collapsed before he could rescue her. Owen appeared, having implanted a bomb in Ethan's head. Just like Lindsay, Ethan was helpless as Owen prepared to kill Julia in front of him. This time, there was no Musgrave to stop him. In the final moment, Ethan managed to push Owen out of the room, where he was hit by a car and killed. Ethan rushed back inside to save Julia and handed her a gun. Though she had never used a weapon, Julia nervously found her target through a mirror, eliminated the threat, reloaded, and killed Musgrave. Ethan, attempting to disable the bomb in his head with electric shocks, passed out. Luckily, Julia, being a nurse, performed emergency measures, miraculously saving Ethan. The bomb in Ethan's head did not explode, leading to a perfect ending. In the end, Ethan resigned from Theodore's team because he and Julia had married and planned a long honeymoon. As for what the rabbit's foot was, it no longer mattered. Knowing it was a highly destructive weapon was enough. Hannaway was happily walking down the street when a beautiful woman approached him and, without a word, opened fire. The woman then hugged Hannaway, but shot him a few more times in the stomach before stealing his backpack. This woman is Moreau, a top assassin, and Hannaway is an agent for the American IMX intelligence agency. What Moreau took was actually Russia's nuclear launch codes. Just moments earlier, Hannaway had put on special contact lenses that allowed him to immediately identify the target. Hannaway turned his ring and discreetly pricked the target with it. In no time, the target lost consciousness and passed out. Having successfully obtained the nuclear codes, Hannaway let his guard down and was intercepted by Moreau. Fortunately, Moreau didn't know that Hannaway's contact lenses had recorded her appearance. At this time, Ethan received a mission briefing and learned that a terrorist codenamed Cobalt planned to purchase the nuclear codes from Moreau to detonate a nuclear bomb. Ethan needed to infiltrate the Kremlin to find Cobalt's files and stop him. So, Ethan disguised himself as a Russian general and, along with his deputy Benji, broke into the Kremlin. As soon as they entered, security stopped them because Ethan's ID card wouldn't scan. Good thing Jane threw the cracking device balloon into the Kremlin in her emergency. Ethan's ID card then scanned successfully. They reached the hallway to the archive room, switched the camera feed, and used a 360-degree camera to check the hallway. A security guard was on duty, so Benji used a sound simulator to create a dripping noise to lure the guard away. They then set up a holographic projection in the hallway, perfectly simulating its appearance. The guard didn't notice anything unusual. Ethan entered the archive room only to find that Cobalt's file had already been taken, and it was Cobalt himself who took the file, deliberately exposing Ethan's actions before blowing up the entire Kremlin on his way out. He framed Ethan and the American government for the explosion. To ease tensions between the US and Russia, the American government denied Ethan and the IMX agency's legitimacy. Ethan and his team were globally wanted, and Ethan was injured in the explosion and closely watched by Sidorov. Ethan woke up and managed to escape. Catching Sidorov off guard, Ethan then found the IMF director to ask what to do next. Analyst Brandt immediately recognized Cobalt's true identity as Kurt Hendricks. Ethan realized the grave situation. Hendricks had not only destroyed his own file but also stolen a nuclear launch device. If Hendricks obtained the nuclear codes, it would mean the end of the world. At that moment, terrorists attacked, killing the director on the spot. Ethan and Brandt escaped by falling into the river. They regrouped with Benji and the others to plan their next move. Ethan learned through intelligence that Hendricks would send an operative to Dubai to trade with Moreau. Their plan was simple: impersonate Moreau to meet Wiestrom and impersonate Wiestrom to meet Moreau. This way, they could retrieve the nuclear codes, get the nuclear launch device back, and find Hendricks to capture him. But saying it was easier than doing it. Burj Dubai is the tallest tower in the world, and secondly, the security system here is one of the top in the world. They needed to enter the server room from the outside to control the cameras and elevators. Benji only gave Ethan a pair of gloves so he could stick firmly to the glass. Ethan had to rely solely on his arm strength to climb up, with a distance of 400 to 500 meters to the other side, risking a fatal fall. Using his years of agent training and extraordinary endurance, Ethan quickly reached the target floor. However, the right glove lost power and failed, leaving him to rely on one hand. At that point, it was safer to climb up. Fortunately, Ethan reached his destination and used a glass cutter to cut through the glass, though another mishap occurred. Ethan had to climb again and, with the glass cutter dropped, had to break in by force. Luckily, he succeeded without further danger. Following Benji's instructions, Ethan inserted the decryption hardware into the machine. Benji successfully hacked into the hotel network, taking control of the cameras and elevators. He and Jane quickly remade the door numbers, while Ethan climbed down using the fire hose. But the rope wasn't long enough. Ethan swung hard. Then, another mishap occurred. Hendricks' men brought a nuclear expert to verify the nuclear codes. This is bad. The original plan to provide a fake password will definitely not work. To make matters worse, their mask printing machine broke down. They can only meet their targets stiffly, praying that neither party had ever seen each other before. Fortunately, neither party recognized Ethan and his team. Ethan, using the pretext of verifying the nuclear codes, demanded that Moreau hand them over. Brandt, who had special contact lenses on, transferred the nuclear codes to a special box prepared by Jane. Hendricks' inspection of the code showed no issues, so he handed over the diamonds. Benji, disguised as a waiter, stole the diamonds and quickly delivered them to Moreau. Satisfied, Moreau handed the nuclear codes to Brandt, but at the last second, Moreau noticed Brandt's special contact lenses. Ethan and Brandt quickly subdued Hendricks' men, but Moreau escaped. Jane, having completed her task, was excited to hear Moreau had fled. Her goal all along was to kill Moreau to avenge her lover. She told Ethan to leave Moreau to her and go after Hendricks' men. Ethan was surprised by Brandt's combat skills and became suspicious of him. He told Brandt to regroup with Benji, while he pursued Hendricks' men alone. However, a sandstorm hit, causing Ethan to lose his way, allowing Hendricks' men to escape. Jane managed to kick Moreau off a building, but the plan only half succeeded. Hendricks had the nuclear codes and the launch device. However, to successfully launch a nuclear weapon, a satellite link was needed. Ethan, after much inquiry, learns that Russia had sold obsolete tactical communications satellites to a certain telecoms company in Mumbai. The deal was brokered by Hendricks, indicating he had planned everything meticulously. Ethan and his team rushed to Mumbai to shut down the satellite, but they needed a password. The password was only known by the telecom company's CEO. Jane seduced the CEO and used force to extract the password, but they were still a step too late. Hendricks had already used the satellite to contact the officer guarding the nuclear weapon. Seeing Hendricks input the correct password, the officer activated the warhead. Hendricks then launched the missile toward the United States, intending to spark a US-Russia war. His ultimate goal. The missile had already surfaced and was minutes away from its target. At the telecom building, Ethan encountered Hendricks, pursuing him for the nuclear launch device. Hendricks sent his men back to sabotage the satellite equipment. When Benji and Brandt arrived, they found Jane injured by Hendricks' men, and the satellite equipment's power cut. Benji said they needed to restore power, or Ethan wouldn't be able to deactivate the warhead even if he had the launch device. Brandt went to the power room and, with Benji's assistance, eliminated Hendricks' men and restored power to the telecom company. By this time, the missile had left Earth's atmosphere and was rapidly approaching its target. Ethan struggled, as Hendricks fought fiercely, reclaiming the case multiple times before falling off the building with it. Ethan drove a car and, without hesitation, plunged down. He retrieved the case but couldn't deactivate the warhead. The power was back, but the signal needed time to restore. In the final seconds, Ethan repeatedly pressed the deactivation button, successfully shutting down the warhead. The warhead hit a building in the U.S., falling into a river and becoming a dud. Ethan and his team had saved the world. Sidorov arrived, and upon learning the truth, realized he had wrongfully accused Ethan and his government. He then took Ethan to the hospital for treatment. At the end of the film, Ethan assigned new tasks to his team, but Brandt was reluctant. As it turns out, he was also a very good first-line agent back in the day, but his last assignment was to protect a newlywed couple, but because of his negligence, he failed to protect the bride, who was brutally murdered. The groom was Ethan. Brandt didn't want to return to fieldwork. Ethan revealed that his wife wasn't dead. He had hidden her away. He assured Brandt that he would protect his wife and that Brandt shouldn't blame himself. Relieved, Brandt accepted his mission and left. Ethan, too, set out for his new task. As for his wife, letting everyone believe she was dead was the best way to protect her. The movie ends here. Having watched the entire Mission Impossible series, this fifth installment is the most thrilling and complex one yet. Ethan arrives at a bookstore where the clerk is his contact and a fangirl. Ethan takes over the mission from the liaison, which turns out to be switched by the terrorist organization. Ethan is trapped in a glass box and helplessly watches as the contact is killed by terrorists. Ethan is drugged and, when he wakes up, he finds himself captured by the terrorists. The terrorist leader assigns a woman the task of turning Ethan against his allies, but others plan to kill him. Seeing this, the woman discreetly takes the handcuff key and signals Ethan. Ethan seizes the opportunity to overpower his captors. The woman helps by providing cover, and together they take down the remaining enemies in the room. She frees Ethan from his handcuffs and helps him escape. However, the woman insists on staying behind. Ethan is baffled by this mysterious woman, unable to determine whether she is an enemy or an ally. But there is no time to ponder this. After escaping, Ethan contacts Brandt back at IMF headquarters. Ethan reveals that the Syndicate, a terrorist organization, is real. He also knows about IMF's operations and all its intelligence stations in London. Ethan suggests investigating the information on former agents from various intelligence agencies, particularly those declared dead or missing by their governments. He suspects that the Syndicate is composed of these agents. Brandt dismisses this, citing Ethan's previous actions that led to the Kremlin bombing and nearly handed nuclear codes to the terrorist Hendricks, almost resulting in an attack on the United States. Due to these incidents, the CIA and Congress demanded the disbandment of IMF. The members of Congress approved the CIA director's request, and Brandt was reassigned to the CIA. Upon learning this, Ethan decides to find the Syndicate on his own. The CIA director is furious when he finds out, believing that the Syndicate doesn't exist and that Ethan is fabricating an enemy to justify IMF's existence.
I'm going to find him, Brandt, and when I do, he will be called upon to answer for every wanton act of mayhem he is responsible for. Welcome to the CIA.
You'll never find him.
Set your watch, Brandt. Ethan Hunt is living his last day as a free man.
Despite the CIA director's words, Brandt is right instead. For 6 months, the CIA's attempts to capture Ethan yield no results. The only information found in the rental house where Ethan was last apprehended was information on former operatives from various countries. The CIA director knew that Ethan alone couldn't have gathered so much information, so someone from headquarters must be secretly helping him. He suspected Benji and questioned him daily about contacting Ethan, but Benji consistently denied it, passing the lie detector tests without any signs of stress. Benji then receives something in the mail from Ethan, a ticket to the Vienna Opera House in Austria. That night, Benji rushed to Austria. As soon as he got off the train, a mysterious person handed him a file containing glasses that allowed him to communicate with Ethan. Ethan told Benji that the Syndicate terrorists, who killed a female liaison officer during the Vienna concert, would be there again. He needed Benji's help to find them. As the concert began, Benji controlled the surveillance cameras to scan for targets. Meanwhile, outside the theater, a female assassin appeared, and Benji spotted another male assassin, informing Ethan immediately. Ethan pursued them and discovered that their target was the Austrian president. Ethan eliminated the male assassin and took his gun, only to find a third assassin. Ethan couldn't take down both assassins simultaneously, If he killed one, the other would surely shoot the president. The best solution was to fire at the president, missing him intentionally to cause a commotion. The male assassin, seeing the female assassin fail, turned his gun on her, but Benji rushed in and killed the male assassin. With the opera house in lockdown, the female assassin couldn't escape. Ethan called out to her, urging her to escape with him. It turned out that the female assassin was Ilsa, the woman who had previously saved Ethan. They escaped, only to witness the Austrian president's car explode. Benji arrived in a car to pick them up, but a black car chased them. Ilsa, realizing the pursuit was after her, left a lipstick for Ethan and jumped out of the car. Once the people in the black car captured Ilsa, they stopped chasing Ethan, who then confirmed that Ilsa was an undercover agent within the syndicate. Though he didn't know which country she was working for, he knew she wasn't an enemy. Ethan gave the lipstick to Benji, who discovered it was actually a USB drive containing a database located in Casablanca, Morocco. The two rushed to Morocco and found Ilsa inside a local bed and breakfast. Ilsa was training to hold her breath underwater, dissatisfied with her progress. Seeing Ethan, she explained everything about the syndicate. The man with glasses was Solomon Lane, the creator of the syndicate. He was a former MI6 agent, and Ilsa was currently an MI6 agent assigned to infiltrate Lane's organization. After 2 years, she learned that Lane had a ledger documenting all members and the structure of the organization. One of Lane's subordinates betrayed him, stealing the ledger to blackmail him, but was later killed by Lane. The ledger was hidden in a database in Morocco, which posed a significant threat to Lane, so he sent Ilsa to retrieve it. The database was located beneath a local military power plant. For Ethan, this was simple. A mask would solve most of the problems. The most challenging part was the final stage, gait analysis. Any deviation in walking would trigger a deadly response. Ethan suggested alternative ways to access the server room, but Ilsa dismissed them all. Having tried them before, the only way was to implant fake identity information into the security system, stored offline in an underwater cooling array. The cooling array had a single maintenance door that could only be opened from the inside. Opening it from the outside would result in being washed away by the high water pressure. Ethan had to enter through the intake valve without an oxygen tank. As metal would trigger the intake valve's closure, they estimated it would take at least 3 minutes underwater. A daunting task for Ethan, but there was no other option. Inside the cooling array, Ethan was about to replace the identity information when he was struck by a bearing, dropping the ID card. With less than a minute of air left, water began flooding in again. Ilsa was unable to control the inlet valve, and the immense pressure of the water flow impeded Ethan's movements. And Benji has come to the final level, and if Ethan can't replace his identity in time, Benji will surely die. In the last moment, Ethan completed the task, allowing Benji to access the server room and copy the ledger. However, Ethan, suffering from prolonged oxygen deprivation, lacked the strength to open the drainage valve and fainted underwater. He was on the brink of drowning when Ilsa arrived in time to save him. After regrouping, Ilsa suddenly attacked Benji, seizing the ledger. What was going on? Could everything she said before be a lie? Was all of this just to gain Ethan's trust and help her get the ledger? Could she really be a syndicate terrorist? However, the events that followed proved she wasn't a terrorist, because during Ethan's pursuit of her, Lane's men indiscriminately shot at both her and Ethan. After Ethan eliminated the pursuers, Ilsa escaped again. And Ethan could only watch helplessly as she left with the ledger. Ilsa took the ledger to her superior, the head of MI6. Having completed her mission, Ilsa wanted to be recalled, but her superior refused, demanding she return to Lane to gather more intelligence. He threatened that if she didn't comply, her status as a wanted terrorist would never be cleared. Ilsa had to go back to Lane. Surprisingly, Lane didn't kill Ilsa. He valued her potential so highly that even knowing she was an MI6 spy, he still wanted to recruit her. He decided to give Ilsa another chance to prove her loyalty, but his subordinate reported that the USB Ilsa brought back was empty. With doubts, Ilsa finds Ethan, who by now has 2 more helpers. They learn that the CIA director, furious over his inability to capture Ethan, had issued a shoot-to-kill order. Worried for Ethan, the two allies had come to help him, coincidentally rescuing him from an attack. When Ilsa met Ethan, he didn't blame her, knowing she was just doing her job. Ethan told her that the ledger was indeed on the hard drive she took, and there was only one explanation: her superior had erased it. Ilsa felt a sudden despair, now uncertain who she was truly fighting for. Ethan tried to recruit Ilsa, but she revealed their current predicament.
The way I see it, you have three choices. One, you hand me and the disk over to the CIA. I'm proof the syndicate exists. Lane becomes their problem, and your work is done.
Works for me.
My thoughts exactly.
But you know they're not going to believe you. And you'll all be tried for treason. Lane goes free.
I'm afraid she has a point.
Two, you let me walk away to an uncertain fate. You use the disk as bait to trap Lane. But some part of you suspects you've met your match. And being a gambler, you'll probably end up handing Lane that disk whether you want to or not.
And option 3?
The third option is actually Ethan shedding it all to leave with her. As Ethan hesitated, Lane kidnapped Benji, revealing that this was his true purpose in sending Ilsa to meet Ethan. Lane called Ethan, demanding the decryption of the hard drive by tonight in exchange for Benji's life. Ethan agreed without hesitation, even though he knew that decrypting the hard drive required the British Prime Minister himself. An almost impossible task. Ethan had to try for his best friend, Benji. Luther and Brandt had risked everything to stand by him in his darkest times, so he had to succeed no matter what. Getting close to the British Prime Minister seemed impossible, but they devised a plan. Brandt would pretend to inform the CIA director, summoning him to London. When they met, Brandt told the director that Ethan's target was the British Prime Minister. The director, alarmed, contacted the MI6 head, who quickly arranged a meeting with the Prime Minister.
What do I have to do with this phantom network?
Sir, this is William Brandt, a former colleague of Hunt's. He came forward with first-hand knowledge of the plot against you.
Sir, Hunt is in possession of a virtual red box that can only be opened by you. He believes it is the key to bring down the syndicate.
Upon hearing the name Syndicate, the Prime Minister was a little surprised. The Prime Minister then revealed everything he knew about the Syndicate. It turned out that the Syndicate was an experiment orchestrated by the MI6 head. He recruited former agents from around the world to form an unacknowledged organization that secretly eliminated enemies of the British government both domestically and abroad. All their operational funds were hidden in the Moroccan military database, controlled solely by the Prime Minister. Unfortunately, the Syndicate's leader, Lane, betrayed the organization. To cover up his failure, the MI6 had denied the Syndicate's existence and did not inform the Prime Minister, who had not approved the plan. The CIA director, still fulfilling his duty, advised the Prime Minister to stay hidden for safety, warning that Ethan would find him otherwise. However, the MI6 head was actually Ethan in disguise. This was the only way he could get close to the Prime Minister and control the situation. When the real MI6 head arrived, Ethan quickly subdued him as well. Brandt then urged the Prime Minister to decrypt the hard drive. Inside, they found over £4 billion. This was the money Lane wanted, essential for him to conduct further operations. It was crucial that this money never fell into Lane's hands. Ethan memorized all the account information from the hard drive and then destroyed it. He then went to make the deal with Lane as agreed. At the meeting place, only Ilsa and Benji were present. Benji was strapped with a bomb, and Ilsa was sent to kill Ethan. Ethan offered £50 million from the accounts first, demanding that Lane release Benji, believing that Ethan had destroyed the hard drive and memorized the accounts. Lane released Benji and ordered the nearby assassins to kill Ilsa and capture Ethan alive. Ethan and Ilsa fought back, but they were outnumbered. They split up to escape. The top assassin pursuing Ilsa, whom she eventually defeated. Meanwhile, Ethan faced Lane's pursuit. He cleverly lured Lane into a trap. Despite his unwillingness to accept defeat, Lane was ultimately captured and brought back to the United States. At the end of the film, the CIA director again proposes to the House to reinstate the IMF team, and the MPs, although angry, agree to the CIA director's request. The movie ends here. Solomon Lane's identity is that of a former British MI6 agent. After defecting, formed a terrorist organization called the Syndicate. Though Lane himself was caught by Ethan, his followers have continued their crimes over the past 2 years. Just a few days ago, they released the smallpox virus in Crimea, a region in Western Asia. These followers, calling themselves the Apostles, aim to overthrow the current world order and create a new societal structure. Their method is terrorism, and in their words, without death, there can be no precious peace. These people can be considered a modern-day cult. Recently, the Apostles have had new activities, and the CIA intercepted intelligence that they were purchasing 3 plutonium cores from an Eastern European organization. Plutonium is a crucial material for making nuclear weapons, with a half-life of an astounding tens of millions of years. A place destroyed by such a weapon is virtually impossible to rebuild. As for how this Eastern European organization obtained such a terrifying thing, the movie states they stole it from a Russian military base. Ethan's mission is to stop the Apostles from obtaining the plutonium, so he offers a higher price to strike a deal with the Eastern European organization before the Apostles. The deal went wrong, and the Apostles not only killed the members of the Eastern European organization but also threatened Luther, demanding that Ethan hand over the disposal. To save Luther, Ethan allowed the plutonium cores to be taken by the Apostles. Having the plutonium doesn't equate to having a nuclear weapon. An expert in nuclear weapons manufacturing is needed. This man, he is also a terrorist who agrees with Lane and the concepts of his Apostles. So, a terrorist named Lark was sent to kidnap a Norwegian nuclear weapons expert and successfully brainwashed him. The movie doesn't explain how or where Ethan caught this Norwegian expert. To extract Lark's whereabouts from him, they staged a scene where the expert saw news of terrorist attacks worldwide and then negotiated with him. The expert agreed to give Ethan his phone password if the US president read their terrorist manifesto on TV. In reality, the hospital was fake, and the president was actually Benji in disguise. They successfully obtained the password. The CIA director used the phone to trace a call from Lark to a so-called philanthropist named Alana, who was secretly involved in arms trade and money laundering. The content of their call is that Lark wants to buy 3 plutonium bombs from the Apostles, wants Alana to bridge the gap, and will meet tonight at a private club in Paris. Ethan's goal was to recover the plutonium cores, making Alana and Lark his targets. Unexpectedly, the new CIA director assigned Walker to accompany Ethan to ensure he didn't act recklessly. They jumped from a plane at 25,000 feet above Paris, but an accident occurred. Walker was struck by lightning and unable to open his parachute. Ethan helped him deploy the parachute, wasting time and forcing Ethan to open his own parachute just 2,000 feet from the ground. After a successful landing, they headed to the club and found Lark in the restroom. They tried to capture him alive, but Lark was a formidable fighter, and the two of them together were no match for him. Just as Lark was about to shoot Ethan, Ilsa appeared and saved him. When Ethan asked why she was there, Ilsa said she couldn't tell. Ethan understood she was on a mission and didn't press further, originally planning to create a mask of Lark to meet Alana. Ethan now had to rely on luck since Lark's face was damaged, gambling that neither Alana nor Lark had met before and wouldn't recognize him. Fortunately, Alana had never seen Lark nor Ethan. Mistaking Ethan for Lark, Alana took him home and revealed that to buy the plutonium cores, he must do more than just pay. He must prove his loyalty by breaking their leader Lane out of captivity. She even presented a plutonium core as a token of good faith. Ethan hesitated. More importantly, their rescue plan involved killing all the soldiers, but since Ethan was now playing the role of an utterly ruthless terrorist, he had to agree to avoid blowing his cover. The night before the prison break, Walker met with the CIA director and told him that Ethan was actually Lark. We were all deceived by Ethan, and Walker provided evidence to the CIA director. Ethan, still unaware that he's been set up by Walker, begins ambushing the road to rob the prison. When Lane arrived at the scene, Ethan didn't follow Alana's plan. Instead, the car containing Lane is simply rammed off the bridge and hijacked by Benji and Luther. Ethan and Walker then escaped, leaving Alana's men behind. After regrouping, the four of them opened a garage door and ran into a police officer. The officer became suspicious upon seeing them with a captive, but then Alana's men arrived and shot the officer. Ethan eliminated Alana's men and approached the wounded officer. On the way back, they were ambushed by Ilsa, who intended to kill Lane. She didn't explain why to Ethan. Ilsa's actions were disrupting Ethan's plan, so he didn't give her a chance and rammed her with the car. After securing Lane at their base, Ethan returned to Alana, continuing to pose as Lark to negotiate with the Apostles. Ethan explained to Alana that his actions were necessary because her plan was flawed and would have resulted in casualties, including Lane's death in the chaos. Alana believed Ethan and blamed Ilsa for the deaths of her men. Afterward, Ethan met with Ilsa and learned why she wanted to kill Lane. It was an MI6 mission because Lane, a former MI6 agent, knew too many British secrets. Many countries wanted to prosecute this terrorist, so they couldn't let him be handed over. Ilsa took on this mission because MI6 promised to restore her freedom afterward. After learning the truth, Ethan regretfully said that they would have to be on opposite sides again. Ethan then contacted Alana, who arranged for him to meet the Apostles for the transaction. However, an unexpected turn of events occurred when Hunley informed Ethan that his mission was cancelled. The reason was that Ethan had been accused of being Lark, with solid evidence, and Hunley was there to arrest him for trial in the US. Ethan knocked out Hunley and had Benji wear a Lane mask to go with him to the deal, leaving Walker to guard the base. As soon as Ethan left, Walker went to the cell to free Lane, but Lane didn't want to leave.
No, I'm staying here. I haven't finished with the hunt yet.
Why'd you have to make this so complicated?
I don't understand what you mean.
The deal was simple. I help you frame Hunt. You give me the plutonium. You're wasting time.
There cannot be peace without first a great suffering. The greater the suffering, the greater the peace.
During their argument, Walker realized that this Lane was fake. It was Benji in disguise to extract information from Walker, and Hunley wakes up. He's always trusted Ethan, so he plays along with him in this drama. He even opens the call. Upon hearing this, the CIA director understood the truth. But even so, she still didn't trust any of them, believing that any one of them could be Lark or the mastermind behind it all. So she ordered their arrest. At that moment, among the group of agents, some of Walker's men turned on the CIA agents and killed them. Lane seized the opportunity to escape. During a fight with Walker, Hunley was stabbed to death, and Walker escaped, with Ethan pursuing him alone. Guided by Benji, Ethan chased Walker, navigating through the city and facing numerous challenges. Finally catching up to Walker's elevator, Walker then pulled out a photo of Julia. Walker threatened Ethan, demanding he turn himself in and admit to being Lark, or else Julia would be killed. Walker could have killed Ethan right then, but didn't because Lane had instructed him not to. Lane wanted Ethan alive to suffer. Ethan watched helplessly as Walker got away. The villains obtained the plutonium and went to Crimea, where a pre-built nuclear launch facility awaited. They chose this location to detonate the nuke because it supplies water to 1/3 of the world's population, causing massive impact. Benji had previously placed a tracker on Lane, so they followed him to Crimea, accompanied by Ilsa. While Ethan pursued Walker, Ilsa found Ethan, and Luther told her about Ethan's wife.
Why are you telling me this?
He cares about you more than he can admit. That's one more worry than he can handle right now. If you care about him, you should walk away.
Understanding Ethan's predicament, Ilsa abandoned her intent to kill Lane and decided to assist Ethan instead. There, Ethan unexpectedly encountered Julia, who had married a fellow doctor. Despite still loving Ethan, Julia watched him leave with tears as he continued his mission to save the world. The team found one of the nukes. With a 15-minute countdown, Luther stated that to stop the nuclear launch, both nukes and a remote detonator needed to be deactivated simultaneously. Luther stayed behind while the others searched for the remaining nuke and the detonator. Ethan saw that Walker had the remote detonator and had already initiated the launch sequence. Ethan chased after him, climbing onto a helicopter. taking out the guards and pilot, and began pursuing Walker's helicopter. Meanwhile, Ilsa found Lane and pursued him alone, but was ambushed and captured by Lane. Benji heard the commotion, rushed to help, and was also ambushed and strung up by Lane. In a critical moment, Ilsa broke free, killed Lane, saved Benji, and found the other nuke. Julia found Luther. In the sky, Ethan's and Walker's helicopters engaged in a fierce battle. Eventually, Ethan's helicopter crashed into Walker's, and they both plummeted. The helicopters fell into a crevice, teetering on the edge, ready to fall and be destroyed at any moment. Ethan, risking his life, jumped to seize the remote detonator. He ended up hanging on the cliff, with only a rope anchoring him to the ground. Time was running out for Ethan, and Walker was physically stronger in close combat. After defeating Walker, Ethan frantically climbed up. Luther and Benji, unable to contact Ethan and unsure if he had the detonator, agreed to cut the wires in the final second if they didn't hear from him.
3, 2, 1, now!
Thankfully, Ethan did not disappoint. At the last second, the three successfully completed the mission. Seeing the nukes didn't explode, Lane was instantly disheartened, and the movie ended there. Beneath the glaciers, Danger Lurk, a Russian nuclear submarine, is conducting training beneath the icy waters. Suddenly, the sonar alarms blare. An American Virginia-class nuclear submarine is speeding towards them at maximum velocity. The captain immediately takes evasive action, loading all torpedoes and preparing for battle. But before they can complete their maneuvers, the American submarine strikes first. The captain quickly releases decoys and fires a torpedo in retaliation. Unexpectedly, the enemy torpedo bypasses the decoys. With just 400 meters left, it's too late to dodge.
3, 2, 1, impact!
Just as everyone despairs, the enemy torpedo mysteriously vanishes as if it never existed. Strangely, as the enemy submarine is about to be hit, it also disappears without a trace. The crew is stunned but safe. The captain orders a ceasefire and the shutdown of the torpedo system. However, the stop button is unresponsive. In a shocking twist, the torpedo they fired at the American submarine turns back towards them. A powerful explosion instantly destroys the submarine, leaving no survivors among the hundreds of crew members. As the submarine sinks, a storm is about to brew. 3 months later in the United States, Ethan receives an urgent mission from his superiors. Intelligence indicates that Ilsa is being hunted by international intelligence organizations for a special key. Ethan's mission is to find Ilsa in the Arabian desert and obtain the key. Wasting no time, Ethan tracks a bounty hunter to Ilsa's hideout in an abandoned village. Just as he warns Ilsa, the bounty hunter spots them. A storm sweeps in, providing Ethan cover as he rushes towards the village, while Ilsa provides sniper support, taking out enemies. Through their teamwork, Ethan's precise shooting clears a path. Ilsa takes down a sneaky attacker, sustaining only minor injuries. They set a corpse ablaze to fake Ilsa's death, ensuring her safety. A week after the two men parted, an urgent high-level meeting was being held in the CIA headquarters building in the United States. Months ago, they developed a computer virus called Entity to monitor and steal intelligence globally. Just as the plan is a huge success, the Entity goes out of control and invades the Arab Intelligence Agency, stealing a super AI that gains the ability to learn and think on its own. Breaking free of the CIA's control once and for all, the Entity can manipulate digital information, altering anything recorded, stored, or transmitted digitally. With the rising number of global intrusions, critical U.S. sectors have suffered varying degrees of damage from the Entity. Intelligence reveals that merging two keys grants control over the Entity, allowing dominance over global intelligence systems and establishing a new world order. Ethan already has one key, and the carrier of the other key will soon pass through a Middle Eastern airport. The CIA director orders the key to be captured at any cost, authorizing lethal force against any obstruction. At that moment, Deputy Director Eugene receives a box from his assistant, containing a miniature gas mask. Everyone except Eugene is poisoned unconscious. Ethan, disguised as the assistant, overhears the plan. Realizing the entity should not fall into any hands, Ethan decides to collect both keys to destroy it, even if it means being branded a traitor. As guards call in, Eugene signals for help, but as he smugly hangs up, Ethan is already plotting his escape. A few days later at a U.S. military base in the Middle East, Jasper is tasked with capturing Ethan. Meanwhile, Ethan gathers his teammates Benji and Luther to plan their next move. The lighter is a radiation counter that detects values specific to the key, and the glasses come with a reality enhancement feature that shows the location of the key in real time. Ethan's plan isn't to steal the key but to sell it and then track it to understand its use. As they start their mission, Jasper's team assembles at the airport. Using an advanced intelligence system, they quickly identify and lock onto Ethan. Jasper's team rushes through the airport but captures a decoy instead. Jasper had some gouging and scratching and pulling down, realized that he was being tricked, and instantly had his heart cooled down. Turns out Luther was prepared for this. He hacked into the airport's surveillance system, and with the snap of a finger, any man in the airport could turn into Ethan at any time. Meanwhile, Ethan finds the key carrier, and in an instant, the key vanishes from the man's possession. Ethan spots the key now on a woman's waist. Luther immediately pulls up her profile. The woman's name is Grace and her criminal record is nothing short of jaw-dropping. At this point, Benji's computer screen, a security system alert suddenly popped up and the parcel suspected to contain a bomb escaped airport security for check-in. With Luther's remote assistance, Benji rushes to neutralize the threat. Ethan intercepts Grace, retrieving the key in a brief encounter. Minutes before the flight departs, the man realizes the key is gone, jeopardizing the entire plan. Grace recognizes Ethan's exceptional skills and reluctantly hands back the key. Unaware of the unfolding events at the airport, someone is manipulating everything from the shadows. Benji finds the package, revealing a small nuclear bomb. The bomb has an 8-digit combination lock with 14 letters on each dial, totaling 1.5 billion possible combinations, making quick deactivation impossible. Suddenly, the bomb's screen lights up, presenting 8 questions to stop the countdown. Elsewhere, in the terminal, Grace finds the man in the waiting area, only to discover he's been killed and the stolen key is a fake. Benji's open bomb is empty. Realizing something is wrong, Ethan and Grace quickly leave. To evade the CIA, Ethan and Grace hide in a store. In a moment of distraction, Grace vanishes, taking the key with her. Ethan is just about to go after him when he sees Gabriel, who Ethan has been searching for since he absconded with the murder 7 years ago. And now that he's reappeared, he's bound to be dangerous, alerting Luther and Benji to retreat. Ethan climbs to the terminal to catch Grace's flight. Back at CIA headquarters, to counter the entity's threat, they activate Cold War-era satellites using analog signals and track Grace. Upon her arrival in Italy, Roman police detain her at the airport. Sensing trouble, Grace claims the passport isn't hers and discreetly pockets a pin. As she plots her escape, a lawyer arrives, specifically asking to represent her. It turns out that Grace was taken away on the front foot, and Ethan was tailing her on the back foot disguised as a lawyer. Grace picks a man on an airplane, asks for his phone number and then steals the key and puts it in the man's pocket. After escaping from the police station, she simply pretends to be on a date with the man and gets the key back to her employer, with a $10 million payday at her fingertips. When Jasper's team arrives, Ethan and Grace are gone. Ethan, thinking he had the key, underestimates Grace again. She suddenly cries for help, accusing him of harassment, and Ethan is surrounded. Grace fires to the door, grabs a police car and begins to flee. Ethan, out of options, takes a motorcycle. Though her plan was perfect, Grace's driving skills are poor. Seeing that Grace is about to be taken, Ethan steps in just in time to finish them off. It was only at this moment that Grace realized the gravity of the trouble she was in. Jasper, always a step behind, finally saw an opportunity for a promotion and a raise. In the next moment, a SWAT team rushed in, mistaking them for terrorists, escalating the situation. Attacked from behind, the SWAT team was taken out, their rifles stolen, and a massacre ensued. Amid the gunfire, Ethan grabbed Grace and tried to escape to retrieve the key. Seeing this, Paris eliminated the last SWAT member, got into an armored car, and began a relentless rampage. On the narrow streets of Rome, with the police in hot pursuit, Ethan remained calm and handled the situation with ease. They hid the car under an arch, planning to switch vehicles to evade the police. Their phone indicated that a safe car was nearby. After a quick check, they managed to start the car. However, high-definition roadside cameras exposed their location, and more police joined the chase. Paris got the update over the radio, further complicating the situation. They were soon trapped in an alley, about to be crushed by the armored car, but Ethan, at the last moment, turned sharply and narrowly escaped into a passage. Reversing at high speed, they finally stopped in a subway tunnel. Ethan tried to calm the frightened Grace, but she handcuffed him instead and left him behind. Before he could pick the lock, the roar of an approaching train filled the tunnel. At the last second, Ethan twisted off the steering wheel and escaped from the car. At this point, Luther and Benji arrived in Rome, bringing along the long-missed Ilsa. The four of them went to a safe house. Based on Benji's intel, there was going to be a party at the Duke's mansion in Rome, where Grace would meet Alana with the stolen key. Alana would then have all the keys. Meanwhile, Luther, after scrutinizing airport surveillance footage, found something suspicious. All images of Gabriel in the footage showed signs of real-time tampering, but a clue was found in a mirror in a shopping mall. It turned out that everything that had happened so far was orchestrated by Gabriel from behind the scenes. Upon hearing the truth, Ilsa learned that Gabriel was actually serving the entity. He wanted to steal the key to eliminate the only weakness of the entity, and if he succeeded, the consequences would be unimaginable. That's why she acted first, stole one of the keys, and hid in the desert to defeat Gabriel. One must think like a machine, becoming cold, ruthless, and driven by pure logic, qualities that are Ethan's weaknesses. Despite having his beloved Ilsa by his side, Ethan always had a bad feeling. That night, when Ethan and Ilsa arrived, Gabriel and Paris had already been waiting for a long time. Grace, on the other hand, was waiting with the key for her deal with Alana. Grace didn't expect Alana to immediately search her by force and not mention the promised $10 million. Realizing that she might become expendable once she handed over the key, Grace discreetly slipped the key into a suit pocket as the bodyguard approached, which Ethan noticed. Unable to find the key for the moment, Alana invited everyone upstairs for negotiations. Ethan spoke of the horrors of the entity, hoping Alana would see the bigger picture and abandon any plans to cooperate with Gabriel. However, to Ethan's surprise, Alana feared the entity's retaliation more than offending several superpowers. With its ability to perform hundreds of billions of calculations per millisecond, the entity could not only manipulate the thoughts of billions of people but also analyze every causal relationship, converting all outcomes into probability charts to show the most likely results. This essentially meant that the entity had the ability to predict the future. Gabriel threatens Alana that both Grace and Ilsa are bound to die tonight, which will be a heavy blow to Ethan. After saying this, Gabriel left, and Alana ordered her men to take action. Ethan urged Ilsa to flee as far as possible, then seized the opportunity to create chaos. Ilsa took down a few people and quickly left the scene. Grace snatched the dagger from the table and, as the bodyguard approached to stop her from leaving, she managed to retrieve the keys as well. Just as Ethan had tackled the bodyguard to the ground, he realized that the keys had been taken by Grace. Because of the security guards along the way, they eventually lost Grace and had to ask for support from the off-site duo. Luther hacked into a Russian satellite to provide Ethan with real-time navigation, but the entity breached the system too quickly, soon compromising the communication system. The entity, impersonating Benji, sent out misleading instructions, causing Ethan to not only completely lose track of Grace but also get trapped in a narrow corridor. Faced with an ambush by Paris, Ethan was desperate yet unable to escape, resorting to fighting with all his might. Paris thought she was going to die, but Ethan, not wanting to add to the carnage, just swung his bat in anger and left in a blaze of glory. On the river arch bridge, the fleeing Grace collided with Gabriel, with no way out. She brandished her dagger in a desperate fight, but soon both daggers were knocked out of her hands, and she was trapped. Just as Grace was about to meet her fate, Ilsa appeared behind her, a former agent herself. Ilsa engaged Gabriel in a fierce struggle. However, as the fight intensified, Ilsa's weakening condition became apparent. Injured in several places, She was unable to continue fighting, and tragically Gabriel seized the opportunity to fatally stab her. By the time Ethan arrived at the arch bridge, Gabriel had already vanished, leaving only Ilsa's cold body. Without time to mourn, Ethan learned that Alana had abandoned the deal with Gabriel and instead planned to meet a mysterious person on the Orient Express departing for Innsbruck. Having recognized Grace's potential in previous encounters, Ethan persuaded her to join this mission. Perhaps feeling guilty over Ilsa's death, Grace agreed without much hesitation. According to Ethan's plan, using a convincing disguise, Grace was to impersonate Alana, with Ethan acting as her bodyguard. Once the key was in hand, they would quickly evacuate. But a malfunction during the creation of the bodyguard's mask meant Grace had to complete the mission alone, while Ethan found another way to board the train. An hour later, the train departed on schedule. Paris had already infiltrated the train, heading straight for the cargo hold to kill the duty officer and then opening a previously placed box to release Gabriel. Gabriel locked the cargo hold door and went straight to the locomotive cab, where he killed the driver, smashed the brake mechanism, and pushed the train's throttle to the maximum, cutting off any possibility of slowing down. Meanwhile, Alana returned to her compartment to rest briefly while waiting for the buyer. As soon as she entered, she encountered Grace, disguised as her. Before Alana could react, a dose of anesthetic made her instantly fall asleep. Grace quickly took the key before the bodyguards became suspicious and was in character when the buyer arrived, who turned out to be Eugene. To avoid blowing her cover, Grace managed to distract the bodyguards and proposed the deal to Eugene. She presented her passport, falsely claiming to admire his capabilities and requesting full protection from the US government. With such a straightforward request, Eugene readily agreed, and seeing the cruciform key on the table, he generously offered to pay $100 million. At this point, Grace only needed to take the money and leave to enjoy her life. But as the transfer was about to be completed, she suddenly remembered Ethan's last advice not to hand the world over to the devil for personal gain. She refused the transfer, pretended to shake hands with Eugene in a hurry, and left, once again stealthily taking the key with her. Only when the real Alana arrived did Eugene realize he had been fooled, prompting him to order his men to chase after her. In another compartment, the CIA director personally intervened in a conversation with Gabriel, revealing the truth about the silent Russian submarine. Originally, the earliest version of the entity, approved by him to infiltrate the submarine, was intended only to monitor its movements. Unexpectedly, the entity went rogue, disobeying orders and overachieving its task. Now, to fully control the entity, the original code locked in the submarine's data center was needed, accessible only with the key. The location of the submarine was known only to him. The director attempted to recruit Gabriel to collaborate. If he could control the entity, he could eliminate all political rivals and ascend to the presidency, easily conquering the world by merging the entity with the military-industrial complex. Unbeknownst to the director, Gabriel was no ordinary thug. Because Ethan had spared Paris, she, in turn, was intent on killing Gabriel. The two engaged in a fierce fight in the compartment, and Paris fought desperately but ultimately did not survive. Meanwhile, Ethan is still speeding on his motorcycle along the mountain road. Gabriel has accelerated the train, causing Ethan to miss the best boarding point. Now, he can only follow Benji's directions, riding all the way to the top until he reaches a cliff. Although he has a paraglider in his backpack, the cliff doesn't seem high enough. But there's no turning back now. Ethan finds a relatively flat path and makes a desperate attempt. Under extreme pressure, Ethan successfully deploys the parachute at the critical height, gliding toward the approaching train. At the same time, Grace, who is being chased and cornered, is saved by Ethan's timely descent. Despite the thrilling rescue of Grace, the hard-earned key is snatched by Gabriel nearby. Ethan instructs Grace to control the train's speed while he climbs onto the roof to reclaim the key. With both of Ethan's beloved ones killed by Gabriel, his accumulated anger explodes, each punch releasing his fury. Realizing he's no match, Gabriel quickly draws a knife from behind but still loses in the struggle. Jasper appears at this moment, insisting Ethan surrender and disarm despite his explanations. In the chaos, Gabriel escapes effortlessly. Fortunately, Ethan's persistent explanations finally make them understand the situation, and they follow his advice to evacuate the passengers. However, not far ahead on a stone bridge, Gabriel has planted timed bombs. Gabriel didn't expect that during their fight, Ethan had secretly stolen the key and left a lighter as a memento. with the train completely out of control, Ethan decides to detach the locomotive, hoping to save lives. Time is running short. The two of them run with all their might, making a desperate leap before the carriage plummets, barely saving their lives. Yet, with the inertia of the train, the carriage continues to slide towards the cliff, posing great danger. As the carriage tilts, hot oil from the kitchen spills into the corridor, making their already difficult progress even harder. Suddenly, gas leaks due to the strain. If not for their quick movements, they would have been engulfed by flames. After facing numerous dangers, they reach the passenger compartment. Utterly exhausted, Grace's legs give way in fear, relying solely on Ethan's strength to keep going. Just as they are about to fall to their deaths, Paris miraculously arrives. Using the last of her strength, she helps Ethan and Grace escape the peril. Loyal Paris, however, meets a tragic end. When Ethan asks for information, she reveals everything about the submarine. Ethan realizes that finding the submarine is key to resolving the entity crisis. But for now, the priority is to leave quickly to avoid being arrested by the CIA. With only one parachute available, Grace volunteers to stay behind and buy time. By the time Jasper and his men arrive in a hurry, Ethan is already out of handgun range. Eugene doesn't blame Grace but instead appreciates her outstanding abilities, inviting her to join Ethan's team and officially become part of the mission, Impossible Squad. Ethan reunites with Benji at the foot of the mountain, planning their next move as a showdown between humanity and the entity is about to unfold.